So, today, I want to talk about this thing. The Brush Demon by Outdoor Edge. There, you should be able to see the logo. So, I've owned this thing for about a year, maybe a little more. I got it for 40 Canadian dollars at the Renfrew gun show. I was actually going to buy a Warhammer, but it was sold by the time I got back with the rest of the money I needed. So I used that money to buy this. Now, this thing, we'll get to in a minute, like the actual Brush Demon itself. Let's talk about the sheath. Now, we won't spend long on the sheath because it's, you know, we're here to see that, not this. But I gotta say, it's a pretty good sheath. Just put that down for a moment. Most knives that come with a nylon sheath like this, the sheaths aren't very good, but this one's held up pretty well so far. There is a little plastic lining on the inside, which I don't think you'll be able to see in this light. That just looks like black. Anyway, it's there. So, as you can see with all these little holes in the sheath, it's got many different attachment options. I usually have it hanging from my belt like this, and with the bottom two holes here, tie it to my leg so it's not flopping about like an old dead fish. It also has a little bit of leather there. Probably don't need to get that close. You can see the logo. Most things, you know, generally have their company's logo on them. And overall, it's a decent sheath. It's held up pretty well. But one of the most important things, how well does it actually hold this thing in place? Pretty well. I mean, you can hear it like rattling inside there a little bit, but overall, it's probably not going to come out. I could shake it harder, and it might then, but if it's on my leg like this, it's not going to fly up and out. So, now, onto this thing itself. So, the retail price on the Brush Demon website is $70 US, or like $69.98 or whatever, something rounding up to $70 US. And I think I found it on Amazon as well for 100 Canadian. Now I got this thing at a discount because the guy who was selling it wanted 40 for it, so that was pretty good. And I don't usually buy knives and stuff, especially machetes, on a whim like that. If I don't know the company, I don't have any reviews on it or whatever. But you know, it was 40 bucks, made of spring steel, so that's good. So that's kind of what tipped me over for it. So the blade length is 13.5 inches or 34.3 centimeters, depending on whether you use the metric system or not. The overall length is 20 inches or 50.8 centimeters, so from tip to tip. The handle is Zytel style skin molded. Now I have no idea what that means. In all my days of looking at knives, you know, reading about them, checking the materials, I've never heard of Zytel skin molded. But if we get a little closer, you can kind of see like almost an alligator skin kind of texture on the handle. So it's not at risk of coming out. Like, your hand can still slide up and down. I'm not holding it very tightly right now. But these little hooks, those hooks are great at keeping your hand in place. It's not going to fly out. You're also not at any risk of your finger coming up here and getting cut, because that thing is in the way. And having used it as often as I have, and as many times as I have, I can guarantee that that's not an issue. The only issue I've had with this is there's a bit of hand shock just with the handle here, and it does press up against your pinky, and it, after prolonged use, may give you a blister, but that's easy to cope with. As long as you've got like a, you know, if you're wearing gloves, then you should be fine. So let's talk about the handle a little more. It is somewhat ergonomic. You can see it fits in the hand rather well. It's more comfortable like this. Like if I'm holding it backwards, there, that's better. If I'm holding it backwards with the bulge here in the palm of my hand, it's more comfortable that way for me. I find that's the case with most knives, but it's probably for if you're holding it in the handshake grip instead of the hammer grip. And then there's the ice pick grip, but why would you ever need to hold a machete or a sword in medieval combat in the ice pick grip? I still cannot think of a reason you would need to do that. So, if you look here, there's a tiny little ricasso, which I wouldn't actually recommend using because it's rather small, and your finger is at risk if you hit something and it bounces a little. Your finger may ride up onto the blade like that, because the ricasso is, well, this particular one is not terribly protective. For anyone who doesn't know what a ricasso is, it's like on knives, swords, any bladed objects, really, depending on what their purpose is. Like an axe wouldn't have a ricasso. It's a little unsharpened area just below the blade there that you can rest your finger, so you can hold it like this, but I wouldn't use this one. There is some, there we go, some jimping on the spine here. It's nothing, nothing major. It's not too aggressive, so it doesn't hurt, and it actually provides some decent traction. Like, it's not tearing the skin off my thumb, and it's holding it in place pretty well. Personally, I don't need to use it because the handle is, the handle's fairly big with a little tiny, well, not that tiny, a little hole here that you can stick some paracord through or something and tie it around your wrist, which you could if you want to, but you probably don't need to. So, let's move on. The sheath I already mentioned is made of nylon. I think I mentioned that anyway. The weight is 1.1 pounds, or 485 grams. The total weight, so that's with this thing in the sheath, the total weight is 1.4 pounds, or 639 grams. Now, technically the weight has been changed since I bought it, but like, so minusculely, it doesn't really make a difference, because, you know, when you sharpen it, you're grinding away the steel, and yeah. So I couldn't find how hard it is, like what it's been tempered to, but it is spring steel, and that's what kind of sold me on it, because, you know, for 40 bucks, and it's spring steel, can you really go wrong? I didn't go wrong. This thing's great. So, if you're ever at a gun show looking for a machete, because they do have swords there, swords, knives, bayonets, I would definitely pick up, especially if you can get it on sale, the Brush Demon, because this thing, it's pretty damn good in my opinion. You can see that it's got kind of a kukri going on here. Kukri? I don't know. Guess it depends on how you want to pronounce it. And how the blade kind of widens around here, because this is the, well, it's where you do most of the chopping. And it does chop pretty well. I was on my ATV and there was a tree in the way because it fell over in a windstorm. The thing was probably this big. It's kind of hard to tell on the other side of the camera, but, you know, some sort of pine. I cut that in half, moved it out of the center, off to the side, and this thing still had a decent edge on it. Like, it needed to be sharpened, but the edge retention's pretty good. The tip did bend a little, but that was from when I first got it. I stabbed it into a piece of wood and then kind of, you know, did this. So, that's kind of being hard on it. If you really want to be hard on this thing, or any of your bladed, well, anything really, you can throw it like a throwing knife and see what loosens, what falls off, that kind of thing. I'm not going to do that with this. This thing has already proven itself to me, and I'm not that abusive. Like, I'm not going to throw my pocket knives to make sure that they don't loosen, because they're only $30 knives. I'm not expecting them to be able to hold up to that kind of thing. I know Scalagrim likes throwing his just to put them through the ultimate test, and they do usually hold up pretty well. So to recap, this thing, I'll find the links for them and put them in the video description, and it's pretty damn good. I think that's my final word on it. Definitely pick one up if you are looking for, I guess you could call it a budget blade, because even at $100 Canadian, that's still pretty good compared to some Benchmade or Spyderco knives I've seen that are like $300 before shipping and tax and all that, and that's just for a folding pocket knife. So this thing I've definitely gotten my money's worth out of. Yeah, so definitely pick it up if you can, because it's a pretty good machete.